Welcome to another installment of Donning the Armor. This morning we will begin in 1 Samuel chapter 11, verse 1. Then Nahash the Amorite came up and encamped against Jabesh Gilead, and all the men of Jabesh said to Nahash, "Make a covenant with us, and we will serve you." So we have a pivot here in a way. As the last couple chapters, we've seen Saul being introduced, anointed, then confirmed in front of the nations, or the tribes of Israel and the nation, as shown and being picked out by the Urim and Thummim by Samuel, shown to all the people that this man is going to be your king. These are the responsibilities of the king. These are the warnings I have for you. I'm going to put all these things. I'm going to let you know what is to come. This is the man. We see some people accept him. Some valiant men go with him. Some people rebel, still unhappy, because, let's be honest, they'll be unhappy regardless of who had been chosen as king. Well, here we have a pivot to Jabesh Gilead. Remember, Jabesh Gilead is, as I said, there are a couple of places that we will see that go back to the book of Judges when the judges, in the book of Judges, when the Israelites destroyed nearly the entire tribe of Benjamin, and they forsook giving their daughters over to the people of Benjamin, and said that, "Oh, why have we done this? Was there anybody who didn't come up to fight against the people of Benjamin? Because we said if there was anybody who didn't come up, we'd have to put them to the sword." Well, it was the people of Jabesh Gilead. They were the people who were put to the sword. Now we see some time later, these hundreds of years later, Jabesh Gilead is back. It is back to being a place. It is back to being a city. And we see this Nahash the Amorite. The Amorites were the ones who were defeated by Jephthah, who made the ill-informed vow to give up his daughter. And regardless if you believe he actually sacrificed her life or just forced her to have to serve the temple in celibacy, so to speak, then either way, Jephthah ended his bloodline. He had no descendants after her because that was his only child. So we have an old enemy coming back against a city that has recovered from a previous genocide at the hands of their own people. So he comes in force, and these people of Jabesh tell him, "Look, make a covenant with us and we'll serve you." We saw this during the time of Joshua when one of the cities actually went out. I believe it was from the land of Gilead. And they went out and said, "Hey, don't make war with us. We're from a faraway land. Make a covenant with us." And they did while being ill-informed and not seeking the advice of the Lord. But here they're saying, "Don't kill us. Make a covenant with us. We'll be your servants. Just let us be at peace and be your servants. We don't need to war." And Nahash the Amorite answered them, "On this condition I will make a covenant with you, that I may put out all your right eyes and bring reproach on all Israel." Now, this is harsh, and it's kind of harsh for a reason, and it's because he still wants revenge. These old-standing, old-age rivalries lasted generations and generations. He wants to bring reproach on all Israel for what happened during the time of Jephthah. He's saying, "I'll leave you in peace without killing you, but I'm going to rip out the right eyes of every single person, or at least every single man here in Jabesh Gilead. I am going to do these things so that it will be an embarrassment, a reproach on all of Israel." Then the elders of Jabesh said to him, "Hold off for 7 days, that we may send messengers to all the territory of Israel. And then if there is no one to save us, we will come out to you." So, kind of weird. We're not really told if Jabesh Gilead at this moment is a walled city or something that is something he'd have to actually come and fight against and try to get. But they're saying, let us go for 7 days. Give us a chance to go get reinforcements. And if no one will come and reinforce us, then we'll give in and not fight. So kind of a weird request. Kind of a strange one. But it's also strange in the fact that this Nahash allows them to do it. He actually allows them to send these messengers. He gives them this 7-day, this week-long reprieve. Now, you can sit there and ask, why? Why would this guy allow this? It doesn't make any sense. And from a pragmatic standpoint, it makes no sense. But he knows the disunity of Israel in this time period. He knows the oppression they've been under, the Philistines. He knows all the issues they've had. And he is somebody who from this comes off as an incredibly prideful person. He either is supremely confident that they cannot get anyone to come and help, or he is supremely confident that if someone does come to help, it is going to glorify his name even more because the victory he will have over the people who come to help. He does not envision an instance where he does not have victory, because you have these individualized tribes who so often fight amongst each other and fight against each other and don't have a common national unity as they should in coming together as all 12 tribes to fight against a common foe. They do not do that with any reliable certainty. You'll have certain tribes combine and ally, but the 12 tribes of Israel almost treat each other during this time period as completely separate nations without a common cause. And he knows it, and he's banking on the fact that even if they find somebody to come, they will not in no way be powerful enough to defeat him, which would make him be glorified even mightier among the surrounding area. So the messengers came to Gibeah of Saul and told the news in the hearing of the people. And all the people lifted their voices and wept. Now there was Saul, coming behind the herd from the field. And Saul said, "What troubles the people, what that they weep?" See, now he's been shown to be the future king of Israel, but he's not actually been installed as the king of Israel at this point yet. So he's still acting as his normal self. He's still a shepherd. He's still tending the flocks of his father, and as a rich family, it's not exactly a poor thing to do, but he's coming behind the herd. He's still living in Gibeah. What troubles the people that they weep? And they told him the words of the men of Jabesh. So he now hears the words of the people of Jabesh Gilead. Then the Spirit of God came upon Saul when he heard this news, and his anger was greatly aroused. We've read this a couple times through Judges with the Spirit of God coming upon people, that their anger was greatly aroused. And there's this belief among some areas of Christianity that being angry is sinful. That if you're ever angry, you're sinful. And I'm going to go once again back to the anecdote I said about me being angry at my daughter. That is a sinful anger, because we're told not to let our anger turn into sin, not to sin in our anger. But there is a righteous anger, an anger that is right to have, because it is an anger that seeks justice and comes from love. The Spirit of God is upon Saul in this moment, and his anger is greatly aroused because of the injustice of Nahash and the love he has for his fellow people. His is a righteous anger in this moment, a good anger to have, and an anger that, although we sometimes feel we're walking a tightrope with anger, it is something that we need to make sure we have in check and don't look past, because not every instance of anger is a bad thing. Anger is a tool that can be used to stoke the flames of injustice or used to bring forth great waves of justice. Anger is not an inherently bad thing. Guilt is not an inherently bad thing. Shame is not an inherently bad thing. Worry is not an inherently bad thing. It is what you do with those emotions that is bad. You can worry. Worry is a good tool. You worry because it keeps certain things in line. It helps you not to step falsely out in false confidence. It keeps you from doing something that is dangerous and having you become injured or hurt. It is what you do with your emotions that makes them righteous or unrighteous. Misplaced anger is a great sin. But anger truly pushed towards something God is arousing that anger towards, something that is unjust and goes against the will of the Lord, the will that he has revealed in his word, in his teachings, that goes against every instinct we have walking in his way. That is a good and righteous anger that needs to be harnessed properly at the proper target in the proper way. If a little kid pushes down your toddler and you go and slap a 6-year-old across the face, that's misplaced anger that is unjust, because that is not what the Lord is calling you to go slap 6-year-olds. Now, if a 36-year-old goes and pushes your toddler to the ground, now you got an argument that that's some just anger, because that is an extreme injustice. One is a child doing something the child shouldn't be doing, but children don't know right from wrong at the same level adults do. The other is an adult assaulting a child, worse off, your child. So that would be a much different usage of anger. Not everything is the same. Not everything falls under the same blanket. It's the same thing, and I've said myself, and in a way it is very true. All sin is the same. Well, all sin is the same in that the wages of all sin is death. So all sin will be judged the same. So all sin is the same in the end result of those who are not cloaked in the righteousness of God. However, not all sin is the same. If I go into your house and steal a jar of pennies that had $30 of your loose change in it, you're going to be pretty angry. But if I hack into your bank account and rob it blind of your life savings and your 401k, you're going to be a little bit more of angry. And that's the same sin. That's both theft. That's both thou shalt not steal. But even then, we know that there's degrees to sin that make them ultimately worse. I break into your house and steal a knife, you're going to be pretty angry and probably rightly concerned. I break into your house and stab your knife through your thigh, that's a whole different sin. You would probably rather me just steal the knife. So there are degrees to each of these things, and sometimes we as Christians can get kind of black and white and not realize that there is gray in it. The gray doesn't make it right. But the gray does show us that there are certain things that need to be done. Rahab lying, thou shalt not lie. She lies to save the lives of the Israelite spies. That lie, although still technically a sin, is not the same kind of sin as me lying to defraud my neighbor. It's not the same. And in this, it is a good, righteous anger that is coming upon Saul because of the injustice of Nahash. So he took a yoke of oxen and cut them in pieces and sent them throughout all the territory of Israel by the hands of messengers, saying, whoever does not go out with Saul and Samuel to battle, so it shall be done to his oxen. Now this is reminiscent, because I said 2 places that we're going to see tied into that story from Judges about Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin. Saul from the tribe of Benjamin, Jabesh Gilead, the city who was slaughtered to get the virgins, who had never known a man, to marry, to get wives for the Benjamites. But Gibeah was the city that the Levites' concubine, who he had been bringing back after she played the harlot on him, was brutalized and raped and murdered. That's the place Saul is from, that same Gibeah. And just as the Levite did when he cut her into pieces, to say all of Israel needs to come together, here is Saul cutting apart a yoke of oxen and sending it throughout all the land, saying, you need to now come to do battle. You need to come join with me and Samuel to do battle, or else this punishment will also fall on you. This punishment will be for you as well. And the fear of the Lord fell on the people, and they came out with one consent. Just like they did when the Levites sent it out and they said, this has never been seen in the history of our nation. In the history of our congregation, this has never been seen. So they all came out. They do this again here. Everybody all came out with one consent, with one idea, with one saying, definitely, this has to be done and dealt with. When he numbered them in Bezek, the children of Israel were 300,000, and the men of Judah 30,000. Why they're broken up that way, I'm not 100% sure. And I haven't come across any commentary to say why Israel and Judah are broken up. It almost seems like, as I mentioned before, Samuel is thought of to be written by Samuel, but also to have been written and recorded by later prophets and scribes. Not later post-Christ, not that kind of later, but later as in the early portions of the kingdom during King David's reign. People like the prophet and scribe Nathan and Gad and those types of people who came a little bit later. So if this portion was written later from something Samuel had written and was probably maybe compiled by Nathan, it would make, or actually not even Nathan, it would be in the time of, during the time of Kings, after the country had split by Rehoboam and Jeroboam, then it would make sense that they would think to list them differently through Israel and Judah. If Ezra had been the one to finish off parts of this going through the scripture, it would make sense that they would think of it as two, just think of it in two different. Why, I haven't come across a commentary, but that's my own personal thought on why that might be written that way. But either way, they have 330,000 people making up their army. And they said to the messengers who came, thus you shall say to the men of Jabesh Gilead, tomorrow by the time the sun is hot, you shall have help. So they're saying, the messengers who came, go back and tell your elders, tomorrow, by the time the sun is as high as it is and the sun is hot, somewhere between noon and 4 p.m., which is typically when the sun is the hottest, you're going to have help. We are coming. We are coming to help. You don't have to suffer this disgrace and this wickedness. We are coming to help you. Then the messengers came and reported it to the men of Jabesh, and they were glad. I'm sure they were. I'm sure they were very happy that someone said they were coming and that their eyes were not going to have to be put out of their head. I'm very sure they were very, very happy of that development. Therefore the men of Jabesh said, tomorrow we will come out to you, and you may do with us whatever seems good to you. That seems a little odd to see that said there, but that's being said to Nahash. That's being said to the Amorites. The men of Jabesh are actually lying to the Amorites and saying, tomorrow we'll come out to you, and you can do whatever you want, whatever seems good to you. You want to put out our eyes, we'll come out. We will come out and do this thing because we don't have help. We're going to deceive Nahash by telling him and setting him up for an ambush. So it was on the next day that Saul put the people in 3 companies. We've seen this before. It's just breaking up into battle formations. And they came into the midst of the camp in the morning watch. So basically while it was still dark, they came in the morning and they killed the Amorites until the heat of the day. So they came against them when they weren't looking for it. You know, sometimes we have this weird looking at battle as this weird honorable thing, but you're fighting to the death. You kill them or they kill you. And it's not a biblical thing. It's actually from an old fantasy novel. I can't remember what one it was, but it was in the Dark Elf trilogy about Drizzt, the Dark Elf from Forgotten Realms by R.A. Salvatore. But he's having a training battle with his father. And the Drow elves, the Dark Elves, they're very warlike, evil people. The main character was different. He wasn't one. He wasn't one of that kind of person. And his father knew it, liked it, but couldn't let on to it. And when they were having this training battle, his father cheated. And the Drizzt, the main character, is like, you cheated. You had no honor in this battle. He said, you don't understand. You can win 1,000 fights. You only get to lose 1. Because to lose is death. When you're fighting as these people are, you see the old Revolutionary War style battles that people were fighting. You're lining up. It's one thing when they were lining up on the field and then chaotic battle, which is what a lot of these battles were during this time and up through the Roman times. But when they had muskets in the Revolutionary War era, the British, they would line up as if there's some honor to lining up in front of each other and just shooting and letting each other be gunned down, which is one of the reasons why the British lost the Revolutionary War, is because the U.S. soldiers in a lot of ways were taught to fight by the Native Americans. Native Americans didn't fight that way. They fought very much guerrilla warfare. We're going to attack you when you least expect it, when you're not ready for battle, and we're going to win. Because if we lose, we die. It's one of us are going to die. So in this, we look at it and say, well, Saul's not fighting with honor. No, he's fighting to live. And first off, the Amorites didn't come with very much honor when they said that, when the people came out and said, have peace with us, and they said, we'll have peace if we can rip out your eyes. That's not an honorable person. That's not an honorable thing. And Saul is repaying that dishonor with this, coming against them when they don't expect it and winning a war. Because you either win or you die. There's no in between. You can't expect mercy from wicked, evil people who are set on killing you. That's a fool's errand. So they come up in the midst of the camp during the morning watch. So there's people seeing them coming. It's not like they're all sleeping in the middle of the night. You have a watch. You set a watch to guard. And I'm sure they have them positioned all around the camp. But they come against them when they're not ready in the middle of the morning, and they do battle. And it takes hours, because you're talking about the heat of the day is either noon to 4 p.m. So that's already a 4-hour window. The morning watch would have probably been 4 to 8, somewhere around there. It's basically the watch where it's still dark until the sun's coming up. So you're talking about a good, possibly 12-hour battle that you're now watching. Men slaughtering men. Protecting the honor of their people. Repaying evil with the sword. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. That was Jesus' warning to Peter. You want to live by it, you will die by it. You want to live by violence, you will die by violence. And the Lord is using Saul and the Israelites to judge the Ammonites for their wickedness in this moment. And it happened that those who survived were scattered, so that no two of them were left together. They scattered in such a way that they were running one by one. There weren't even two survivors scattering together. They were running off by themselves. No safety in numbers in this fleeing. They were just trying to survive in whatever way they could. Then the people said to Samuel, "Who is he who said, 'Shall Saul reign over us? Bring the men that we shall put him to death.'" So now they want death for apostasy. Who's the naysayer? Who's the one that went against our new king? Who are the speakers who spoke ill of him, the rebels who spoke against him at the end of the last chapter? Where are those people? Look what our mighty king has wrought. They had these victories before, when God provided, just as God provided and saw them to victory now. But now they're ascribing the victories of God to Saul. They're ascribing the victories of God to man. And now, where they turned from God and refused to want to put to death those from the congregation for speaking ill of the Lord, they want to do it to the one who spoke ill of the man. You know, you read these Old Testament things, and you look at current political climates, and every era can do this, by the way. It's not something special to today. So I'm not trying to be like, oh, the prophecies of just everybody can say the same thing. Everybody says, look how violent it is today. It was never like this before. I grew up in the 80s. Go look up the homicide rates in the 80s. They were way higher than they are now. The political unrest we have in 2024 is still dwarfed by the political unrest we had in 1968. We don't learn from our mistakes, so we keep repeating it. That's true. But every generation deals with this stupidity. And when you look at these kind of things, you look at this hero worship and this idolatry of man to put a leader over them. Look at look at our political climate for the last 20 years. George Bush, to my mind, is the last, George W. Bush, because we've had two of them, is the last president who we did not make an idol of. Barack Obama, before he took office, before he did a single thing, was awarded a Nobel Peace Prize. And then he proceeded to drone half the Middle East to death. So much for the peace. They didn't ask for it back, by the way, which I find interesting, because he was idolized. Then you got the cult of Trump, which I'm pretty sure it was even on one of these programs that I called everybody hipsters for hating him now, because I've hated him since 1988. But you look at the cult worship of him. Then you got the weird cult worship of Joe Biden just because people hate Trump. So we love him. Then you got the same thing with Kamala Harris. Look at what Stop making these people your idols. Look to the Lord. These people want to put somebody to death because they naysayed Saul. The entire nation just turned from God to a man. But they don't want death for anybody else, just the ones who naysayed Saul. But Saul said, not a man should be put to death this day, for today the Lord has accomplished salvation in Israel. One of the last times we see Saul truly speaking the word of the Lord, prophesying in his name. This is not a prophecy as in foretelling events, but the praise of the actual word of God, that it is the Lord who has accomplished salvation in Israel. The Lord has accomplished salvation. The salvation we have as Christians has been accomplished by the Lord. Calvinists, with their attempt to elevate the sovereignty of God, because I've never met a Calvinist that did not love God and Jesus, but in their attempt to elevate God's sovereignty, push out his perfect love to elevate that sovereignty. But the Lord, even our salvation as Christians, is only accomplished by the Lord. He died on the cross. He took sin. He became sin. He was accursed on that tree for us. It was his accomplishment, our salvation. No works can gain it. Simply accepting and humbling ourselves before him and submitting ourselves to his authority is what allows us to be ingrained into that salvation work, that work accomplished by him. It's the last thing one of the last things I should say, Saul says that is absolutely true and God-fearing and God-honoring. And he says it because they want to worship him. And he doesn't want that. He wants the Lord's will accomplished in Israel. Then Samuel said to the people, "Come, let us go to Gilgal and renew the kingdom there." So all the people went to Gilgal, and there they made Saul king before the Lord in Gilgal, at that same place where Joshua had his camp when they first went into the promised land, when they renewed that covenant there and worshiped the Lord there and sacrificed to the Lord there after crossing over the Jordan. There they made sacrifices of peace offerings before the Lord, and there Saul and all the men of Israel rejoiced greatly. Rejoiced because the nation had come together. Rejoiced because they had the king they wished. Rejoiced because the Lord had blessed his people. Samuel still leading the people in the religious ways, in the spiritual ways. Saul looking like the good God-fearing king that he will not end up being. And the people looking like what they always look like. Flawed, fallen, broken. People who will look to God but still wish to have one foot in this world. People who will look to God but don't want to relinquish the materialistic wealth of this kingdom. Who still want a man ahead of them. Who still need a person to stand before them. Who still need something tangible. Instead of letting it go and worshiping the one true God who is spirit who is Spirit-led, and whose amazing love has seen them through all of the days of their lives till now. This is what Jesus said about an adulterous generation looking after signs and wonders. These people are looking to Saul because they want something in the material, something in the physical, when what they truly need is in the spiritual and will lead them to the eternal. And God's allowing them to have all this because it is through this, through the falling of man, through the sinfulness of man, through the pride of man, through the sin of man, through the rebellion of man, that his Messiah will come to end all of that, to turn us from the original sin that we're born into, that dead spirit that is only reborn when we submit ourselves back under Christ. All of this through the Old Testament is leading us to Jesus. These people don't know it, and they won't know it until the time comes when Jesus ministers to them in Abraham's bosom. But we do know it. And we can't lose sight of it, that through all of this descriptive text is getting us to the one great prescriptive promise of the coming Messiah, the accomplished salvation of the Lord for his children, for his creation, for those willing to be his bondservants in his kingdom. But that's where we shall end it for this morning. I hope this was fruitful for you. I hope to see you back again next time. But until then, be blessed.